Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Anaïs Frank, the founder of QualitaX, and I'm joined today by three guests. Well, two for now, but one will join a bit later. Before we get started with introductions, and as a reminder, on today's call, we will explore how standardization and innovations in decentralized identity enable interoperability in tokenization, with a focus on the Decentralized ID for Tokenization framework, the DITO framework for short. So about the format, we'll have a conversation for 40-45 minutes, and we will leave 15-20 minutes to address attendees' questions at the end. So please do not hesitate to share your questions in the chat or the Q&A section as we go. So this is the fourth webinar of our Future of Financial Market Infrastructure series. Previously, we discussed tokenization ventures from Franklin Templeton, WisdomTree, ABN AMRO with Stellar, the use of blockchain technologies to enable real-time corporate treasury management for banks with the Adara team, and blockchain-based payment infrastructure with the UDPN team. So that's it in a nutshell. So now I will stop sharing my screen and we can switch on the cameras. Up. Hello, Sebastián. We have
Hello.
Claus.
Hello, Anaïs. Hello, Claus.
The video.
Yes, so we'll start with introduction. Sebastián, can you tell us about your role at Polygon ID and what Polygon ID focuses on?
Okay, my role is well, officially is VP of product, I think, but in common terms, I'm the product lead. So I'm leading both the technical side and the go-to-market of Polygon ID. Polygon ID is a self-sovereign identity solution. It's full stack, so we provide all the tooling and all the protocol base layer for the creation, delivery, presentation, and verification of trusted credentials and decentralized identities.
Okay, great. Klaus?
Yes, my colleague is trying to join. He has some technical problems, but he should be in shortly. I need him for the technical side of things here. I'm on the business side. My name is Klaus. I'm the CEO of DigiShares, and I have the overall business responsibility for the company, right? DigiShares is, of course, is a white label provider of infrastructure for tokenization. So really brief.
Yes, great, thank you. Yes, when Martin will join, we'll just pause, let him introduce himself, and we will go back to wherever we are. So now we can focus on challenges. To start the conversation and to set the context, that's more a question for Sebastián, maybe. Could you tell us what the common problems associated with centralized identity management solutions are, and why the need for decentralized alternatives for real-world asset tokenization in the first place?
Okay, thank you for the question. So short answer is probably none. There are no technical challenges or technical problems with centralized identity systems. They've been working in multiple environments, and they're still working and will continue working in a lot of contexts. And also, I would like to add, it's the challenge of interoperability comes when we try to decentralize. So centralized systems don't have the challenge of interoperability. So I guess the question is, why do we need decentralization when centralization can deal so well with the interoperability challenge? And I think it has to do not with the technology, but with the concentration of power, right? And with the how strategic these services become in the new economy. So I think a way to illustrate that would be for anyone listening to this to think about their Gmail address or their Apple email address, right? This is a service provided by a single company that is basically become our online identity in hundreds of services. And I would like for the listeners to think what will happen if they get banned from the services overnight, right? Because that could happen, right? And then that could be right now would be a big nuisance. That would be a bit very annoying and very impractical. But if we're trying to digitalize our economy, right, starting from governments and then financial institutions, we're talking about services that are vital for the economy, that are crucial for companies, right? So concentrating that amount of power, all the identity, all the credentials, everything into a single company doesn't seem feasible anymore. And that's why we need to think in open ecosystems. So I would say the challenge with centralized systems is more political or strategic than technical.
Yes, and that echoed the position of some regions. We can think about the EU or the UK, who are very mindful in how they treat what they consider as critical emerging technologies, which include blockchain technologies, and the relationship when it comes to the level of power, as you are saying, that companies, for example, US-based company, may have over this data and their I would say the leverage they have over those key economy or industries such as public sector, but also the financial industry. So when it comes to financial institutions or other, if you want to demonstrate as well for other industry, what are the key, I would say, requirements and business needs based on projects that you have worked on so far that have surfaced and that are similar across different industries?
Is that to me?
It's both of you. Please
Okay.
feel free to jump in and out of the conversation.
Yeah, so if I should start, right, so we're primarily concerned with tokenization, right? So we
Yes.
we listen to a lot of companies, both small and large, on their requirements for tokenization technology. And generally, of course, the level of understanding is not high, right? So it's more basic requirements, I would say, at this stage. But they are interested in automation and cost reduction. They are interested to fractionalize. That's also the really big companies, the private equity firms and so on. They also want to fractionalize, reduce the ticket size, get down to smaller investments. Instead of requiring 1 million per investor, they can go down to maybe 50,000. So that's at least also a fraction for them. And the smaller firms, right, real estate developers and so on, that we have many clients in that space. They want to fractionalize down to 100 euros or US dollars. And then finally, they want liquidity. Liquidity, right, is the holy grail of the tokenization space. I would say it's not something we have been so good at delivering yet, but it's coming, and it's coming quite fast, I think. So the big exchanges, London Stock Exchange, the Swiss Digital Exchange, and so on. Many of these are also going into the tokenization space and launching sort of tokenized marketplaces. So I think we are getting there, but it's taking some time.
Yes. Sebastián, do you want to react to this?
We are facing different requirements as an identity solution, I would say. So if I guess I'll focus the scope of my answer, because the question is quite wide. Right? So when it comes to financial institution and the requirements on identities, decentralized identities, these requirements are very old, right? KYC and all these compliancy rules are very old. So there's hundreds of companies that are providing these services now. So I would say what we are seeing is a new wave of financial services, not necessarily coming from banks, but sometimes derives from banking as a service, sometimes embedded in e-commerce or marketplaces, sometimes coming from the Web3 and the DeFi space, right? So these new players are starting to integrate compliance into the processes because they are mandated to do so, right? And they are trying to find an easier, better way to do it. KYC, which is much bigger than people may think, it's not just scanning face and document, it's way more than that, right? It's very costly. And this cost of onboarding a customer, it has an impact on the user experience, but it also has an impact on the economy. There is a large part of the economy, especially SMEs, and also certain individuals that cannot prove credit worthiness, that are excluded from the financial services, because the cost of just doing the onboarding and being compliant with them is too high for the opportunity they pose for these financial providers. So I would say the requirements we are facing right now is to make the user experience better. I think there is an idea of the reusable KYC. The universal KYC is the holy grail that everybody's chasing, right? It's the idea that you will have to prove things once, and then you can travel with that proof to many financial services, right? And they will give you a quick answer. Like you can get a quick answer of whether you get a mortgage or not, if you get an insurance or not, if you can operate in a market and to certain what is the risk that they are willing to take with you. All these decisions are very slow right now, and the user has to provide information on a one-by-one basis. right? So I would say the biggest requirement or the biggest aim right now for the industry is to create this one-time experience or reusable experience for the user.
Okay, great. So Martin just joined the call. Martin, if you want to switch your camera on and quickly introduce yourself, and then we will go. Hey, hi, Martin.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry, I had some network difficulties. Yeah, my name is Martin Hotka, and I'm part of the DigiShares team, and I'm a blockchain developer, now mostly focusing on Polygon ID.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before we dive into the DITO framework itself, I think most people are here for this. Can you share with us real-life scenario of implementation for both Polygon ID and DigiShares?
Well, as I said, we are offering a tech stack, protocol, and infrastructure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in each case, each partner integrates that to different scenarios and needs, right? So
yes.
There are three players or three users of our stack.
Mm-hmm.
One that the ones that we call issuers. This is identity providers. These could be KYC providers, could be providers of credentials or any type of credential like education, job, age, humanity, uniqueness. Anyone that is trusted in the real world and can deliver credentials. And we have an ecosystem of them that we are growing. Then there is the wallets. We have our own identity wallet, but we believe in an open ecosystem. So we offer a wallet SDK where anyone can add identity capabilities to existing crypto wallets, or they can create their own identity wallets. Like in the case of a national ID, trying to build a citizen national ID, it would be using the SDK. And then the last one are the verifiers, which are the applications that require these credentials to the users, right? And then the user using the wallet and using the credentials that he has collected can present the credentials to the application. And these applications can be in the DeFi space or the fintech space, like DigiShares. They can be in the gaming space, like proving your age or proving that you're not a bot, right? So there is anyone that is listening can search Polygon ID Marketplace. They will see the list of partners that we have in the ecosystem. They will see issuers, verifiers, wallets, right, that are implementing our solution.
Okay, so DigiShares is one of the partners working with Polygon ID, and the DITO framework leverage Polygon ID technology. So Martin, maybe you can provide an overview of the DITO framework and what are the key features of that framework as well.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, basically there are two parts to this, right? First, we have the schema, which represents the verifiable credentials. The schema is used by the issuer of the credential, right? And it is filled in with the KYC data from the various KYC providers. And now once the identity holder or the investor has the verifiable credential claimed, we can move on to the second part, which is the actual verification itself, right? Because I mean, if you have data, you want to verify them in this scenario. So yeah, for this scenario, we use on-chain verification. And yeah, basically to describe the end-to-end flow, the identity holder, in our case, the investor, joins the platform and they perform KYC, right? Once the KYC is performed, they're issued a credential. And then basically, once they have the credential, they can verify themselves. And yeah, so how to verify themselves? Basically, since we are working with permission tokens on a permissionless network, right? For example, Polygon or Ethereum or any other EVM-based network, the on-chain verification works in a way where the credential is taken from the identity holder, or I mean, more like they give it to us, where we verify the information that is needed for a KYC process to fulfill.
Okay, so basically, let's assume I am an investor and I went and onboarded on the DigiShares platform, and my identity was verified securely with the DITO framework. When we talk about interoperability, what are the added benefits that it adds to my experience? The fact that the DITO framework can be used by different KYC providers or different service providers. What is the added benefit for the end user, but also for the platform's providers?
Yeah, so basically, I guess everyone goes through a scenario where they join different platforms, right? And they need to redo their KYC on every platform. And yeah, sometimes it maybe gets a bit annoying already, right? With this, you can reuse your credential on every platform which supports the verifiable credential schema, right? So basically, once the investor or the identity holder does it once, then they can join different other platforms seamlessly. And yeah, that's basically what it enables.
So currently, can you share with us maybe how many companies are leveraging these frameworks? And I'm aware this is very new framework. So, but it will be interesting to know when we are going into 2024 if there are other organizations who are already part of these initiatives.
Let me start on that one, right? So DigiShares has a client network of close to 200 companies using our platform globally on a white label basis. Then we are also launching our own exchange to trade real estate assets on the blockchain. And we will push the D2 standard out to all of these companies, right? So they will, if not be forced to use it, at least be encouraged to use it very much. And the idea will be to make it easy to have a reusable KYC sort of within this ecosystem. And then, of course, we'll also work on external partners. We have been contacting by 1 or 2 every week that are interested also in looking at the D2 framework in order to become interoperable with other companies in the tokenization ecosystem, right? And we've been motivated by such an initiative had been lacking, I would say, for a number of years in the tokenization industry, right? So KYCs were not reusable, and you could not easily jump from one platform to another without having to redo your KYC again. So that's sort of how we envision to get started.
Yes, I think it is really linked to the maturity of the industry because there have been initiatives before that have not gained momentum.
Yeah.
But as we saw in 2023 with tokenization and I would say regulatory clarity as well from different jurisdictions, the need has been there for a while. But now there is the right momentum and the right type of actors to enable such an initiative to succeed and to be adopted to the benefit of not only the financial institution and other institutions, but also for investors as well. So we don't usually do that, but I saw that Subnit, sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name well, has been raising his hand for a while. Do you want to share your question in the chat or so we can address it later, or do you want to speak now to address a point that was just made? I don't know. Are you able to? You should be able to speak. What I propose, if you could write your question in the chat and we'll address it when we have. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I wasn't sure if you could see that. Okay, great. All right. So now a bit of technical questions. So is it correct to say that the Polygon ID, I would say, set of technologies leverages zero knowledge? And it will be interesting to understand and know a bit more about that. I guess that's more a question for Martin.
Yeah. Polygon ID utilizes zero knowledge proofs. And I guess the most simple example always for this, because always it's like a buzzword which is thrown around, right? The ZKPs everywhere. So like the easiest scenario I would describe is imagine you go to a shop and there's an age restricted item, right? And basically you need to prove to the cashier that you are of age, but you don't want to share the rest of your details, right? In a normal world scenario, you would give your ID where the cashier would see your name, everything, right? But in the zero knowledge proof sense, the cashier basically just knows that you are of that age, that it's true. They don't know like their age, like the year, the month, and so on. They just know it's true. And yeah, that's basically how zero knowledge proofs work and how it helps more with the control of your data.
Okay, great. So Subnit is asking, I'm just curious to know do you address the adaptation of asset tokenization? How generic is a framework? What all assets it can capture? That's actually a very good question. Do you want to address it, Klaus or Martin?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. it's important to us that we are not viewed as a centralized or controlling factor in relation to the standard here. It absolutely, to become a standard, it absolutely can't be controlled by any single company, and it also can't be used as a way to generate revenue or increase business, right? So it's really important for us that it becomes usable by everyone and flexible and generic enough that it can be used for all the different purposes that is required, right? So initially we view it as for the tokenization industry or ecosystem, but of course it can be used further than that longer term. But if we consider the tokenization ecosystem, it's important that it can, of course, it'll be asset agnostic, right? So it can be used for any kind of asset. That's not really sort of relevant in relation to the ID itself. But it can also be used by any KYC provider who's interested in making use of it, and it can be used by any issuer, any platform that wants to make use of it will be able to use it, right? And will just be sort of coordinating, I would say, the creation of the framework so that we synchronize at least and achieve something that is agreeable and usable by everyone.
Yes. So just to summarize, this is the EVM-based framework, but it's really agnostic to any tokenization, and it's agnostic to any chain as long as it's EVM compatible.
Yeah, that's maybe the main issue, right? It can't be used on non-EVM chains at the moment.
Okay, so that's great. Before I'm going, I address other questions. I think all of them are really related to how agnostic the framework is and how adaptable also it is to, for example, different regulatory requirements and jurisdictions. So how configurable, the DITO framework is, and how does it really help tokenization framework, tokenization platform and other stakeholders to meet for regulatory requirements. I will read Victor's question, which is related to what I was just asking. Is Polygon ID compatible with digital identity development in Europe, in particular with the EUDI wallet architecture reference framework?
I can start maybe. So
yes, and then Sebastián will go. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's early stage for us in the development, so we haven't actually ensured that it's compatible, but that will be one of the next elements of the process to look at these standards and to make sure that they can be encompassed, basically covered by what we're doing here, right? It definitely has to be compatible. That's the goal.
Okay.
I would
Sebastián,
say, yeah. So the answer is probably not. And what I say probably is because the framework is quite recent, and we have been developing the protocol. So Polygon ID is based on a protocol called Identity. Identity has been in development for more than 4 years now. And we were the first ones to use zero knowledge, the first ones to have on-chain compatible verifiable tokenization presentation. We were the first ones to do a lot of things, right? We didn't wait for standards. So what we do is, once the standard is established and stable, then we adapt what we have to make our servers compatible. So we didn't, for example, we didn't start being compatible with verified credentials and the IDs, and then when we thought the standard was mature enough, we adopted the standard. So we plan to do the same with the ID wallet architecture. But right now, we have been making progress without looking too much at it, because the entire European framework has changed quite a lot several times. We are on the second version now, and still it's not clear that this is going to be the final word on topic. The wallet framework seems to be more stable than the ADAS thing. But yeah, so the answer is probably we are not compatible now, but we will be.
Okay, that's very clear. Victor, I hope this addresses your question. Okay, great. I see that, is it Derek? Sorry, Derek, you are posting a lot at once. What is your question? If you could just summarize your point in one question, and I will ask the guest to address it. What are we tokenizing? So based on what Martin explained, the framework is applicable to all to different type of assets, right? Martin, I just want to correct, this is asset agnostic.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. I hope it addresses your point, Derek. So going into 2024, what are the biggest opportunities and challenges or limitations that you see when it comes to digital identity in general?
I can start again.
That's a very, very broad question.
Yeah, yeah, good
That's
question.
a very broad question. I would say there are mega trends. I wasn't there to give a single answer on a question like that. But I would say there is a big trend in national identities.
Yes.
I think we see it in Africa, in Asia. Europe is moving probably slower than most, but we know that once they have it, everybody will want to copy it, or at least be interoperable with them. There is a lot of concerns about interoperability in all these governments, and certainly once these deployments start to happen, we're gonna see some changes in the identity space, because there's no need for more document verification. There's a lot of things that we need to do today won't be necessary anymore, right? And there's gonna be a lot of new services that will flourish from these national identities, right? So I would say that is one clear megatrend. The other one is regulations. We are seeing many regulations coming that will affect or will impose harder requirements on credentials in general. We see MiCA for the financial space, but also a lot of regulations around age verification online that also is tied to identity and credentials. There's a lot of discussions about privacy in that matter. There are regulations coming about open finance and how open finance should happen. And open finance is very closely related to credentials and identities. So we see a ton of regulations coming that will impose new requirements on how we represent ourselves online, right? So I would say, I don't know what's going to be the biggest challenges in 2024, but I think a lot of companies that haven't thought too much in identity or credentials, they will have to start thinking how they integrate them to their workforce.
Okay, thank you very much. Claus, did you want to add anything on this?
Yeah, I just want to add that we scanned the market for a long time before we started on this initiative, and we really hoped that someone else would do it, because it's sorely needed in the tokenization industry to become, I think, reach the next level and become interoperable and work together as an ecosystem. We found Polygon ID as the leading player in the space, having put something out 4 years ago, right, very early days, and of course, again, I think doing something that is beneficial for the entire ecosystem without necessarily gaining anything from it. And that was the same motivation that we had. And I think that from our perspective, we don't actually care so much whether this becomes the future standard. We just want something to happen that will be a standard, right? Because that's good for all of us. And if we can help push that process forward and be like a, I don't know, a synchronizing, coordinating factor in helping that to happen, I think then our goal is achieved, and the entire crypto and tokenization ecosystem will be better for it. And I think it's unlikely that any of the national European level DID schemes will become a global standard, right? So we still need something to work across every country globally, right? And maybe that's the direction we could be looking in.
Yes, and that's a very relevant point, because when we talk about standards, there are always two-way standards will really emerge. The de facto standards, which are adopted by industry, so what are people actually using in market, and standards developed by standard development organization, which could be mandated by different governments or institutions. And the EU is very good at doing this. So I guess is it fair to say that right now, when it comes to the DITO framework, the goal is really to gather industry interest and to develop this? And I will go and ask Larry Miller's question, which is, I will anticipate that a key requirement will be to be able to demonstrate to regulators that the ID framework, so the DITO framework, is compliant with regulatory requirement. How will this be done? So maybe it's in terms of the roadmap. Once people do that, how are we sure that when an investor on the DigiShares platform is being KYC'd, uses these frameworks, that it meets all existing regulations?
Yeah,
I would like to say something about this.
Yes, sure.
Is what I call the standards last mile, right? A lot of standards that were meant to bring the interoperability failed to do so because nobody did the last mile. And that is the case, for example, for verified credentials. That is the case for DIDs. That is the case for a lot of things that we're supposed to bring the interoperability schemas, right? Schemas are a tool for interoperability, but somebody needs to do the last mile. And the last mile is to make the business decision. But the people in charge of the standards and the legislation are not gonna decide. They're not gonna decide how we name a field, right? Or how many of this is an array or an object. Nobody's gonna decide that at the standard level. But on the other side, if nobody does that from the industry or nobody leads that from the industry, the interoperability won't happen. And these small, very technical decisions will fragment the entire market as they have been doing for a lot of standards, right? And the same, I think, the same can happen with the European standards, right? I don't think they will bring the last definitive formula for everyone to use. They will set some requirements, and there's going to be like 20 different ways to meet these requirements. And I think in this scenario, the data framework is very relevant in making this last mile decision, right? That use all the components, all the schemas, the verified credentials, all the standards, but also with a very particular flavor, right? Without an interest to control that flavor, right? I think everything is being done as a public good, right? For the sake of the industry to grow, right? Yes. But somebody has to put a flavor on the table, at least to start discussing about.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to add anything, Martin or Klaus, before, because we have a few questions in the chat? Nope? Okay, perfect. So Subnit asks, how are you addressing right to forget for digital asset verifiable credentials with respect to GDPR?
That's for you, Martin.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about Polygon ID and also working with the data standard, right, is that the identity holder owns the credential themselves, right? The verifier never has access to those credentials. So basically, the only link where the KYC data goes to the identity holder is when the KYC provider approves the KYC verification and then gives the claimable verifiable credential to the identity holder themselves, right? So in this case, then it's up to the identity holder to provide the data if they need to in some instance.
Okay, that is clear. I'm just trying to catch up. I think it was Derek again who has now left. So I think that's fine. Oh, so Derek, sorry. So how can we guarantee decentralization when do you have a legal framework? This is a very basic question because governance is always needed. So I will address that one. This is a question which is recurrent, I would say, within the permissionless space, and particularly in the Ethereum ecosystem. And there is a way to approach this, which is either people are being idealistic and believe that decentralization is one thing, or we adopt a pragmatic approach where we realize that decentralization is spectrum, and that it doesn't matter what layer we are talking about, technical layer, regulatory layer, application layer, there will be regulation affecting all players that operate in those layers. So if infrastructure providers on permissionless networks are subjective to rules and regulation that could create friction with decentralization, any legitimate business will have to operate within the context of the legal framework, regulatory framework of the jurisdiction in which they operate. So that, I would say, the reality of how things will happen. And there is a view that, yes, there is a view as well that regulation should target application layer rather than infrastructure and pure tech layer. We will see. I think it's very early stage. This is still an emerging space. So we'll have to see how those things emerge with time. I hope I addressed your question, Derek. So, okay.
Is that a question for anyone of us?
Yes, of course. If you want to, yeah, sorry. This question comes in time and time again in different, from different perspectives. So, but yeah, please do address it as well.
So as Martin said, right, our Polygon ID, if you take it in the vanilla flavor, let's say, it's completely decentralized. It's the maximalist approach to self-sovereign identity, with all the data stays with the user, right? That said, if you want it that way, you can have it that way. Let's say that now that you want to have a national ID system, right? Well, most people won't want the responsibility of being custodial of their own keys and their own credentials. They don't want it, right? So then you start saying, oh, but it's not decentralized. I think the decentralization, when we move to the application layer, I think decentralization is a very important concept at the infrastructure level because decentralization prevents censorship. But then when you're moving to the application level, right, these applications are providing services. They are not providing crucial, vital services that you need to run your business, right? Any business in the world has the ability to deny services, right? It's a basic thing in business, right? So I don't think decentralization is the most critical value there. I think the critical value is trustless, right? So it's not how much centralized the platform is, it's how much trust I need to have in you doing the right thing, whether, or if you are using Simpson chain, you are being auditable, transparent, and actually the system that you are using or that you have created doesn't allow you to do the wrong thing, right? So I think being trustless is more important than being decentralized at that level, right? And I think you can prevent a lot of, or you can satisfy a lot of legal requirements if you are trustless. Right, because you are transparent, you are auditable, right? You can prove things mathematically, right? You don't need to put your trust in a company doing the right thing or an individual not looking at your credentials.
Yes,
that's a great question. Can I add a short answer?
Yes, of course, of course.
It's a really good question, right? So we tokenize, or our clients tokenize mostly real estate, and it's normally done through an SPV, so they tokenize the shares. But it can also be possible to tokenize directly an investment contract on the real estate property itself. It is possible. But basically, we tokenize securities all the time, right? 100% of our projects tokenize securities. So we cannot fully decentralize. We decentralize as much as we can, but it's required for wallets to be whitelisted. It's required to track a share cap table in some centralized place. The regulators, the government want to have some party that is responsible for tracking the share cap table, maintaining that. It cannot be avoided. And also, I would say the KYC itself is also can be viewed as a centralizing factor, right? Non-decentralized because it's a certain KYC company is responsible for that. But apart from that, we decentralize as much as we can. But there are limits to how far we can go.
Of course, of course. So I think, let me see. Derek seems to be very happy with the answers, so I'm glad, Derek, that finally you got appropriate answers to your questions. So to go back to the DITO framework, I think some of the attendees raised a very good point in terms of how some requirements will be met. So if they wanted to contribute to the effort or access to understand, okay, what is currently being done, what are the structures, etc., the schemas, sorry, can you share with us the link or what would be the process for them to engage with you, Sebastián, or your team, I would say, and yourself as well, Claus and Martin?
On our side, yeah, you have to reach out to us. We don't have anything that is publicly accessible yet, but everything will be, of course, available to the public. But you have to, reach out to me and Martin at this stage.
Okay, and Sebastián, is the same on your side?
Well, on our side, I would say we started talking about interoperability, and interoperability is a very big topic. Because it requires somebody to implement things, right? So first you need the frameworks and the standards, then you need somebody to run the last mile and make decisions. But also you need that to turn into code and to applications that people can use, right? So when we analyze what it would take for a reusable KYC, right? If we want to have this idea of, okay, you go to any issuer, right? You get your credential and then you can use it in a number of places, right? What does it take? First thing is that we speak all the same language. And the same language is divided into things. First, we need to use verified credentials, which is an standard. There are like 16 flavors of verified credentials. We need to pick one. Well, Polygon ID is providing that flavor, right? There is a DID method. We are providing a specific DID method. It's a matter of how much adoption we can get on that. The second part of the language we speak is the schema, which is a very important part where it's very simple, but you need to put together a lot of companies agreeing on something. That is not simple, right? But that schema also, which is a file, it's a JSON file, is super crucial for this company because if they base their business on that schema, right? They want to make sure that that schema is going to be stable, it's going to be a public good, it's really accepted as a standard of the industry. For that, we have built a repository that people can check here in the chat, right? This is a tool where you can graphically create a schema for any type of credential, right? But the nice thing is once you create your schema, you can publish that on IPFS in a decentralized storage that is permanent, immutable forever, right? And then you can do forks, but you will never be able to touch that schema again. That schema becomes a public good, right? Yes. So we can convince players in the industry that this schema that we have standardized doesn't belong to anyone. Nobody's able to take it down. Nobody's able to change it, right? So I think that is the first part. The people can explore there what schemas are, and they will see many KYC schemas. We are following the lead of DigiShares, and we're speaking with other KYC providers to get acceptance of this standard, right? And then when we get enough traction, we will be promoted here in this repository. We'll have some kind of visual clue or something, so any new provider knows that. The second aspect of interoperability is you need to curate which issuers of credentials are to be trusted, right? Right now, we are bringing them one by one, but in the future, if you are an application, you should only say, look, I will accept any credential that follows this schema, and that is from a trusted provider. And trusted provider means that there is a trust registry, and there is some governance on that trust registry that analyzes who gets into the list of trusted providers, if they are compliant to these countries, right? So there is governance. These two elements, the trust registry and the schema, are crucial, right, for building this framework. So if your question was if they want to engage or explore, etc., I would say go to the repository, check the KYC schema that people are building. Right now, these are developers testing their tools and doing the schemas, right? But there is one of them that we are trying to promote and make the standard.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you for this. We also have a subnet who worked on interoperability before. So I worked on an interoperable and unbundled network based on Beacon. I'm not sure what that is, I will be honest. Challenge I was faced was how the partners implement those APIs. How do you make it easy and breakable experience for the implementation? So I think you have addressed this. I will already, Sebastián. So.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't understand.
If you can read it in the chat, I think it will be easier from Subnet.
Okay.
So I guess it's related to the ease of implementation and adoption of the DITO framework.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, yes. I understand the question. Yeah. Yes, we started with the protocol. The protocol is called Ident3 and is managed by NGO. It's a public good, right? But the protocol is really difficult. So on top of the protocol, we built Polygon ID. That is owned and sponsored by Polygon, but it's basically a set of SDKs and tools to make it easier to use the protocol, right? And now we keep adding more tools for developers. So I think the answer is you need to consider developers to be your user and then work for developers. We go to a ton of hackathons, and these are our main source of feedback. We see where people get stuck. We see what they don't understand, and then we improve our documentation. So the schema builder, the tool that I just shared, was the result of 3 hackathons where people get stuck because they couldn't create the schema, because JSON LD seems to be quite difficult, right? And it's very error prone. So after the feedback, we decided that we needed to have that tool. We created another cool tool called Query Builder, that I think can be accessed in the same URL, right? Same thing, result of seeing a lot of developers trying to do that. It was too difficult. Okay, so let's create a nice UI so they can do it without coding. Right? So it's basically try and error, but to have this feedback loop with the community. You need to do the hackathons, you need to be on the field, and you need to be where the developers get stuck.
Yeah. What is interesting to notice is that the work has been in the making for years now. But due to the industry maturity, and that's what I was mentioning before, it's really now that people have the right tools and the right incentive to try to solve these interoperability issues. And so thank you, Subnet. With everything shared today, I want to say that the DITO framework is still early stage. It was announced, I think, just a month ago, a couple of weeks ago. So, which is why there is a it's very important to get to an understanding of what it is aimed to achieve, the scope of work, and how easy it is to implement. And I think you have addressed all of those 3 questions, Sebastián. Thank you very much. I love the idea. I could see the smile on Martin. Okay, great. I love the panel. Thanks, and I also adding value. Thank you very, very much, Submit. I appreciate that. Oh, sorry. I've just realized we have like 10 minutes to go. I know we had questions already in the chat, but if you have questions, it's now the time to ask before we conclude. And on your side, Claus, Martin, Sebastián, if there is anything you would like to add, please do so now. Yes, all good. So I will ask if you are in a position to share, what is a roadmap looking like for DigiShares in 2024?
Yeah, so concerning the Polygon ID integration with the DITA standard or a framework, we are working closely with the Polygon ID team. Basically, every new feature that is released by Polygon ID, we are instantly using it and testing it, and yeah, just playing with it. I mean, we are like on the cutting edge, of technology. So every new thing is a new thing, right? And you need to explore a lot and test a lot. So yeah, and basically the end goal is for the users or the identity holders to have like as much as possible of a seamless interaction with the platform, right? And yeah, that's basically all.
Okay, great. Sebastián, what is in the roadmap specific to Polygon ID upcoming features that you maybe can share with us?
A lot, but I think
the key features.
yeah, I would say the next release, we work for in releases every about 2 months, more or less. We deliver a big bunch of features. Next release, release 7, has a super strong focus on user experience. I would say over the next 2 releases, we are gonna chase this idea of open finance. That is our goal. Is to allow this this idea that all your credentials and all your records that you need to access and interact with financial services are in one place, and then we manage all the consent. Right, you are able to consent to give access or not to different levels of privacy. Right. The focus is going to be on user experience. We are going to keep the current version of Polygon ID, which is fully decentralized. Everything is on the user, etc., etc. So there will be cases where that will be preferred, but we want to work on more user-friendly setups, right? Where maybe the credentials are stored outside of the wallet or not only in the wallet, so we can have a multi-device experience. Right?
Okay, great.
We want to integrate with multiple authentication methods, so people will be able to authenticate with their MetaMask, or they may be authenticating with passkeys, right? So we want to get closer to the real use. I think we have been assuming for a very long time that the Web3 user is willing and able to go through 3 loops and 4 steps, right, to accomplish something. But we want to go to a bigger public, to a wider audience. And that requires that we have also easier methods to use the product.
Yes, that's very clear. Thank you very much. I have one last question. Oh, I've noticed someone put a note on the Q&A. Fad is asking, what are the best practices for interoperability or going multi-chain? Any guidance would be appreciated. We Mabruk on Polygon network. So yes, Fad, just to ask, what are you doing exactly? If you could put what is the product or service you are delivering? My bad. That will be helpful for context. Islamic asset tokenization. So is your question related to tokenizing asset on... Can you clarify the multi-chain part? I guess this is where I'm the most trouble. So right now you are tokenizing on the Polygon network, but you are considering tokenizing on other networks as well. Is that correct? It's just okay.
Well, yes, because the Polygon ID standard works across all EVM compatible chains, right? So that's easily achievable.
Yes. Okay. So potential clients are asking if we can go multi-chain. Yes. So Klaus just addressed that as long as the other chains are EVM compatible, the framework will be supported. So it's not only interoperability between the providers, but also across chains. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions? I'm just checking the chat. One moment. Nope, there are not. Okay.
Islamic asset tokenization is something that we are also looking at. We have a partner in the UAE that's an expert in this, right? So that can also be done. I'm not sure it was a question.
Yes, it's related to the same question. Yes.
Yeah.
So, oh, you're welcome, Fad. Okay, I think we are all good unless there is any other point. I just want to check with the guest. All good on your side? No other attendees questions, so I will share my screen again then. All right. Okay, so for those interested in exploring further the future of finance through the lens of blockchain technologies and related technologies, you might be interested in our upcoming webinar with Karen Scarborough from Microsoft. We will explore how enterprises, particularly those in capital markets and payments, are leveraging Ethereum public infrastructure. So that will be on February the 6th, which is, I believe, in 2 weeks' time. So I want to share you, Martin, Klaus, Sebastian, very much for taking the time to share with our audience today to address your question and to tell us more about the DITO framework and what you intend for this to be or to become and what it is already. So I will say thank you to the attendees for joining us today and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank
you for having us.
Thank you.
And one last thing, I'm going to leave a link in the chat. We have also been organizing conferences with other identity companies to discuss the future of identity. It's quite neutral as well. It's not Polygon ID thing. It's other identity companies with different protocols discussing these topics. We just released it now, so I'm sharing if anyone is interested.
Great, thank you very much. And I can also see that for those who are interested in reaching out to Klaus and Martin directly, the email addresses, are in the chat. And yes, thank you very much, everyone. And bye for now. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.